Hi there, welcome to the week ahead with Pivot Trader on the 7th of Feb. A lot to get through today because I think the markets are pretty neatly poised. If things turn down, it could get quite dramatic. I think it's an interesting setup out there with bonds selling off now and those 10 years in the US heading above 1.9%, which I've been preparing you for a while. So we need to have a look at quite a few things, but I want to kick off by saying, look, I run the Pivot Trader service as well as the Australian Small Cap Investigator, but the Pivot Trader service is really where I get to do what I want to do, following my strategy. I don't trade if I don't want, and I only trade when my strategy gives me buy signals, whereas in Australian Small Cap Investigator I'm giving out a tip every month, and it's more long-term investments in the small cap space. So, if you are a member of Australian Small Cap Investigator, it'd be good for you to check out that video on Thursday to really go into a bit of a deeper analysis of what I do and how I trade with members of Pivot Trader, because it is quite a bit different from those regular tips in Australian Small Cap Investigator, which are less timing based and more sort of fundamentally based long-term positions. Just to give you an example, very quickly looking at the trades I've been doing in Pivot Trader. This is Paladin Resources. We bought that at 12 cents. And within a year and a half, it was up above $1. So we bought that right near the low of the move. And just to show it's not a fluke, we bought Linus all the way back at $2.15, right at the start of the move again, before a huge move to above $10, $11. Next stock in the list is Premium. We bought that at 50 cents, just before the big move to the upside. Another one we bought was Allchem, which used to be Orocobre. We bought this right near the lows, $2.83. Again, just before the huge rally to the upside. We've also bought Telix Pharmaceuticals. We bought this below $2. Again, just before the stock ramped to the upside. So that's just a few examples for you. And look, one of my most recent trades is Neuren, another biotech company. We bought this one just before it took off. Again, below $2, and within 3 weeks, it spiked, and we'd taken part profits. So that one, even today, trading up quite strongly, up at $4.25, and we were in that below $2, not out of the money for very long, and we've already taken part profits, and that one screaming higher. So if you want to learn how I'm doing that and what I've been doing with people, and go into a bit of a deeper understanding of the strategy and how it all works, please join the video on Thursday. You get a free trade out of it, and it only takes up a little bit of your time to check it all out. So I'd love it if you could join. I'll put a link in the video for you. Just click on there, sign up. You can even get an SMS reminder for when it's happening, and you'll even see a bit of a market update that I've done recently with Pivot Trader, so you can see just what people get who are a member of that service. So yeah, please check it out if you've been enjoying my videos. So moving on to the markets, and here's the US 10-year bonds, the bond yield chart. You should know this one pretty well if you've been watching my videos. Over the past decade, it's been stuck in a range, seeing false breaks of either edge of that range, and we're seeing another wave higher, going back into the range from the past decade. And I've had a target around 2.2%, which is the midpoint of that range. And we can see that those bond yields are ratcheting higher. The long-term trend is now up in those yields, and we're busting out above the high from last year. So we could be in for a sharp sell-off in those bonds. Who knows? Over the next few weeks is possible. So you've got to be understanding what's going on there and why that is affecting markets. So looking at the US 2 years, you can see they're really starting to take off as people realise that worldwide rates are going to start heading higher now. So we've gone from 0.2 of 1% to up to 1.3% on those 2 years. So that is having an effect, and tech stocks obviously under the pump, etc., etc. But I wonder if the whole yield curve starts really ratcheting higher here, what's going to happen to stocks. And looking at the S&P 500, I just want to focus on the weekly because it's the weekly chart that's just turned down. I've got the weekly trend has just turned down recently, and it's been 20 months of an uptrend. And often when these trends change, you'll see the initial wave down. Prices go back to retest those moving averages. If things turn back down from there, that's where the big move can happen. So that's why I'm just wary right now with this setup. If you look back in the past, before we had the COVID crash, we had the initial wave down. We did actually see a rally all the way back to retest those moving averages before heading down into that COVID crash. And even back here in October 2018, you got the initial wave down, rally back to the moving averages, and this happened a couple of times, back to the resistance before the big wave lower. So it's just a bit of a sketchy spot where we are right now, where we're starting the week. We've retested the moving averages last week, and the bonds are starting to sell off. So does this thing turn down again? And you've just got some dominoes lined up beneath the market here. Below there, that's where you are pretty wary what can happen. And it's been such a long, strong uptrend that when the momentum changes, it can actually be quite dramatic, the initial phase. Oil prices taking off, pretty much playing out as expected. I've shown you the very long-term chart on this. It's a good one to understand. Seeing that wave higher from 2000 to 2007, pretty much making all calculations off that wave. The midpoint of that coming through here around $80. It's already been rejected from there in 2018. Went all the way down to the buy zone again and has taken off. And here we are really busting out above that point of control. So there's just not that much resistance. So it'll be interesting to see how oil prices trade now. Could head up to $100 to 110 in a strong trend from here. So yeah, oil prices looking pretty good for more upside. I think it's worthwhile just mentioning the German bonds having broken above that zero bound. And I have been mentioning this to you recently, but last week's price action really quite telling. So we have the zero bound there on those 10-year yields, and you can see it's been a few years of trading below that level, and again the Coke bottle getting shaken up, and we're busting out above it. So there's been lots of buying there out of the money, and yeah, let's see how high this initial spike higher above the zero bound goes. But if you're just looking at the most recent wave to the downside, I could make a calculation off that where I'd expect it could get to. If I'm looking at the sell zone of that wave, there's probably resistance in yields up around 0.4 to 0.6%. But that's a lot higher than where we are now, but that is where I reckon those rates are going. And you can see that the Spanish and Italian yields really flying higher. They've gone from 0.5% up to about 1.65% last week, seeing quite a big spike. And those Spanish yields really taking off from very low levels. God, around zero for Spanish 10-year bonds. They're shooting up above 1% now. So it's, UK raising rates as well. It is the shift in the yield curve that's the thing to watch, and that could cause more selling pressure. in stocks, and certainly the tech stocks are copying it a bit at the moment, aren't they? So it's going to be an interesting week. If the S&P has a little sell-off, but then the buying pressure comes back in, and you see it hitting above that 20-week moving average, which is up around 4,600 in the S&P. Look, that might mean we've got a bit more work to do on the upside before another wave down. So it really is action stations here now to see whether this current little downtrend is going to continue. And if you really do see it starting to sell off, you've got to be wary, because there could be a lot more downside to come. So all eyes on these US bonds. What happens above 1.9% this week? Do we see steady selling pressure, and does that kick the stuffing out of stocks? So that's really the theme this week. And please check out my video on Thursday. Sign up, get a free trade, and learn a bit more about how I make money for people in Pivot Trader. All right, cheers. Thanks for that. I'll come back with more next week.